Jackson Swearer is going to be talking about downtown living. Jackson and his wife Erin moved from Chicago to Hutchinson last year. They decided to take advantage of the opportunity to live downtown in the newly renovated Wiley building. Jackson shares some of his favorite parts about living downtown in Hutchinson.
This is a view to the south from the 7th floor of the Wiley building. I took this a few days ago in the morning before I went to work. My wife Erin and I live downtown, and we really love it there. This is the story of how we got to Hutchinson, why we chose to live downtown, and what we love about it. This is one of the few pictures I actually took. You can see this one is from Google Maps. As with all stories, it will help if we start at the beginning. I grew up in Hutchinson, spending the first 18 years of my life here. I lived for most of my formative years at this house, 2.5 miles away from the Wiley building, according to Google Maps. 2.5 miles. Remember that number for later, we'll come back to it. When I was born, the Wiley building had many commercial tenants. Both of my parents at one point worked in the building. However, I cannot remember a time when the Wiley building was thriving. The decline of the Wiley building was representative of a declining downtown. Throughout my childhood, more and more businesses left for other locations around town. But the downtown was resilient. As I grew older, seeds were planted that would later lead to a revitalization. I can remember playing in this water park on Avenue A. And many businesses have stood the test of time and remain right where they were when I was growing up. At that time, however, I must admit I was not really that concerned about the health of downtown Hutchinson. Anyone who knew me when I graduated Hutchinson High School would tell you that I had no intention of moving back home after college. I went northeast for school, putting Hutchinson in the rearview mirror. And I dreamed of one day living in the big city. Wouldn't there be so much more to do, I thought. Well, I would have the chance to find out. In this picture, Erin and I are standing outside our apartment building in Chicago. I have to pause for a moment here to say that I've skipped a big part of the story. Somewhere along the way, I met a lovely woman from a small town in Kansas and somehow convinced her to uproot her entire life and move to Chicago with me. But we're going to have to leave that story for another time. We would have loved to live in one of the big high-rises in downtown Chicago, but rent in Chicago is proportional to how far you live from downtown. So we lived 10 miles north of downtown in a neighborhood called Rogers Park. I was in the Windy City, but 4 times as far away from all the action, and it wasn't windier there either. This distance had some major disadvantages: long commutes on the train or in heavy traffic, and truly awful parking. Much worse than downtown Hutchinson. It was hard to take advantage of all of the great things that do come with the big city. Now, there were a few upsides. We were a quick train ride from 2 baseball stadiums. At the game pictured here, the White Sox were kind enough to lose to our Royals on my birthday. Plus, there are lots of great museums and restaurants, which we visited while we were there. And plus, we didn't really need to go downtown. Rogers Park, where we lived, had everything that we really needed: a theater with reasonably priced movies, a bookstore, coffee shops, a local grocery store with local produce, great places to eat, and all kinds of other little shops. Sounds a little bit like somewhere else I can think of. But the snow was too much. We made the decision 2 years ago to start looking for a way to move closer to home. We might have been running away from the snow, to be honest, but the choice to move back to Kansas was the right one. We had gotten our taste of big city living, and we were ready for something different, and something more familiar as well. There's no place like home. We got lucky. Both of us were able to find jobs back in my hometown. I found mine first, and we agreed that I would head back to Hutchinson early to look for a place for us to rent. She stayed behind in Chicago, packing up our apartment, and I promised I would find us a great place to live. It was much easier than I thought. Honestly, I only looked in one building. When I returned in April of last year, I heard there were newly renovated apartments in the historic Wiley building. I knew immediately that this was it. Finally, we could live in the high-rise in downtown we'd always dreamed of. Since moving in, we've met a lot of great people who made the same choice. This is us at one of the monthly community dinners where we all get together to share a meal. Apart from good neighbors, there are lots of other things we love about living in downtown Hutchinson, and I'd love to share some of those with you now. The Fox Theater is just next door. There they show us movies, even closer to our front door than our local theater in Rogers Park. Plus, with their mini shows and Stage 9 just down the street, there's always something great to see on the weekends, just a short walk away. Coming up next is me sitting outside of Bluebird Books. Another favorite location is in downtown. We staged this shot recently. There we can buy our books from our local bookstore and get delicious coffee, two of my favorite things. Plus, they host a book club, one of which Erin and I attend regularly as a way to find new books and to meet new people. Every Saturday during the warmer months, there's a farmer's market in downtown. We go as often as we can, and we always see a lot of people there. With Smith's Market just a short walk away, we can always find that fresh produce from our local grocery store. We've checked off almost everything from my list earlier. Of course, there are all kinds of other shops downtown, and it's great to see so many people walking around and checking them out on Third Thursday. One thing we really love about living in downtown Hutchinson is just how easy it is to walk everywhere. It is extremely walkable, even giving Chicago a run for its money. And we also love all of the parks right on Main Street in downtown. This beautiful view is of Avenue A Park, and between that and DCI, we're spoiled with an abundance of green space right nearby. This isn't something every neighborhood in Hutchinson enjoys, and is one of the great benefits of living where we live. My time's almost up. 1 year in, we're still loving living in downtown. We've often discussed the possibility of buying a house, finding some other place to live that's more permanent, but we always get hung up on not wanting to leave this wonderful area. We're right in the center of the action. We can walk to almost anything that we need. I love downtown Hutchinson. I hope you do too.